Well, hello and welcome to my latest video. A slight change of topic today. Most of my videos, as any regular viewer of my channel will know, are about cycling, but they're all about cycling. And this particular video is going to be about photography, and more specifically it's going to be my thoughts and impressions of this camera, which is the Sony ZV1 or ZV1 if you are living across the pond. Now, I've had this camera for I don't know, about 6 months or so, maybe a bit longer, not sure, and I've used it to make quite a number of the videos that you see on my channel. So I've had quite a lot of experience of it now, and I'm in a position to give my thoughts about the camera. The first thing I'll say is I really like this camera. I think the picture quality, or to be more precise, the video quality is very good. I think it's relatively easy to use, and I think it's got a couple of features which I think are really nice. So let me just go through those couple of features. There are two buttons. One is this button here on the top front right of the top plate, and one is this button here which is on the bottom right of the rear of the camera. And these two buttons can do two things. One thing it can do is to do what's called product showcase. Now, if you're a YouTuber like me and you're doing unboxing of goods and so forth, you hold something up to the camera like that, and the camera that you're filming on is not able to autofocus in time because it's still trying to focus on your eyes. Now, that product showcase button means that when you hold something up in front of you, in front of the lens, the autofocus on the Sony ZV1 is lightning quick, and it will then focus on that particular item. And if you've watched any of my unboxing videos and you've seen things that I've held up to the camera and it's snapped into focus, you think, wow, that's amazing. That is what the Sony ZV1 has done. The other button, the button on the back, allows you to defocus the background. Now, all it's actually doing is moving the lens into its widest aperture and therefore reducing the depth of field so that the background is thrown into out of focus. But pressing that single button makes it very easy to do. The other thing that you'll probably know, if you know anything about this camera, there's been a lot of stuff written about it, there's been a lot of YouTube videos about it, is that it has a flip out screen like this, which can then move in various ways. Now, I'm not that familiar with Sony cameras. This may be the first of the Sony cameras that can do that. I'm not sure, but certainly it is a very useful feature when you are vlogging or making videos. And I suppose I should say that this camera is primarily designed, and I would say optimized, for use as a video camera as opposed to a film camera. The camera that I was using, or the small camera that I was using before buying the Sony ZV1, was this Canon G7X Mark II. Now, that has a flip up screen as opposed to a flip out screen. And one of the problems with that, of course, is that if you have something in the hot shoe there, like, for example, a microphone. Well, actually, you can't put a microphone because there's no microphone port on the Mark II. But let's say you put a flash or something on there, you put up the screen, then it's going to block, or it's going to prevent you actually putting something in the hot shoe. Whereas with the Sony ZV1, that problem doesn't happen. The other thing that they've done is that the microphone port, and yes, it does have a microphone port, which is particularly useful, is on the opposite side from where the screen flips out, and therefore the cable from the microphone doesn't block the screen because the cable comes over to this side and plugs in, which is a nice feature that they've made. You may have noticed on this camera that there is quite a big lens on the front. The first thing I should say is that the Sony ZV1 is a fixed lens camera. and that is how it appears. And the lens, I think, is the equivalent of about 24 to 70 in the 35mm format. What that means is, and a number of YouTubers have pointed this out, if you're using it as a vlogging camera, i.e. you're holding it out like that and you're trying to look at the camera or while you're making your video, your face is very tightly cropped in. It's a bit like that, which, as I'm sure you'll agree, is not particularly pleasant, particularly if it's a face like mine. So you can buy an aftermarket lens, which is made by this company, which is Usability. I think there are other companies that make this same similar product. And what it is a lens that you attach to the front of your Sony ZV1 using a rather small and thin double-sided ring of tape, which goes onto the front of your ZV1, and that widens the lens, probably makes it to about an 18, maybe 19mm wide-angle lens, which gives you an extra or that extra bit of wideness on your lens. Now, it does work, and there is no noticeable diminution of quality. I'm not one of those people who peers at a camera photo or camera video with a magnifying glass to see how many pixels it's got, or whether the image quality degrades towards the edge of the frame, that kind of thing. I don't do that, so I don't notice any degradation in the quality. But the one thing that you do notice is that it is quite heavy, and it makes quite a significant difference to the weight of the camera. And there is also that concern that it is held on, although it's screwed into this front part is then stuck on using a bit of double-sided tape. And I don't think I'm the only one to think, well, how long is that actually going to last before you're walking along a nice concrete path and boom, that bit of the lens falls down. You can also unscrew part of this lens like that, and it will then turn into what I believe is a very good and a very effective macro lens, although I've not tried that particular facility. So this Usability wide-angle lens adapter is an addition if you use it in a particularly careful way. If you're going to use it while walking along with the camera on a tripod while vlogging, I think I'd be worried about it falling off. But when I'm in the garage and the camera is fixed on a tripod and I can kind of see what's going to happen with it, then I feel much more comfortable about using that wide-angle adapter. The other thing I should say about the camera, or one thing I'll say about the camera, this top area here that you can see is a built-in microphone, and it is a very good quality built-in microphone, but obviously with the microphone port that allows you to use external microphones, either your normal Rode video microphone, or perhaps a small Saramonic microphone, or even a Rode wireless microphone, although I've not got one of those, although I quite fancy it. The camera does come with one of those dead cat things, which is in the box somewhere, but it plugs into the hot shoe and it acts as a wind break for the built-in camera. And I think it's very nice. It's very good of Sony to include that, and quite thoughtful as well, recognizing that a dead cat is a very useful addition when you're buying a camera. Normally you have to buy them separately from Amazon, so yes, quite a useful addition there. You can also buy this particular item, which is a tripod and handheld pistol grip type thing, which then Bluetooth connects to the camera. And one advantage I find of this is I often have my camera set up on the tripod where this other camera currently is, and therefore I can just sit here, and when I'm ready to start filming, I press the button and it remote starts the camera, which is a useful facility. But I would say this is pretty expensive. It's about 120, 130 quid, something like that. I bought the two items at a cheaper deal in Curry's, I think, and quite often you do see the two items together at a cheaper deal. But I think this item on its own is, for what it does, it's too expensive. Now, there are cheaper versions on Amazon. I don't know what they're like. I have no reason to believe that they don't work in quite the same way as the Sony one. So I would suggest, I would think twice about buying this item in the same way as I would say think twice about buying this Ulanzi wide-angle lens adapter. So on to the camera in terms of usage. As I say, it is primarily designed as a video camera, and that is how I have used it. I don't think I've actually taken any photographs with this camera, and so I can't really comment on what it's like in terms of taking photographs. But what I can say is that I don't find, that's with the camera switched on, by the way, and you can see how the extra weight of this lens makes you a little bit nervous. But I must say, I don't find, there's the menu screen on the back, sorry, I will finish that sentence. I don't find the menu and the mode and the usage settings particularly intuitive. Now that may be because I've not really used the photographic elements, so I haven't really spent much time studying how it operates. But I certainly find in comparing it with the Canon G7X Mark II, I find this a much more intuitive camera, a much easier camera to use in terms of menu settings and so on and so forth. Now, I wouldn't say that's a criticism on the Sony. It's probably more a criticism of me that I haven't really spent sufficient time in getting to know how the camera works. But in terms of setting the basic menu and in terms of setting it up to make videos, that's very easy to do. And if you look at various YouTubers who say what are the ideal settings or the best settings, I suggest you do that. I did that and set up the camera accordingly. I have not used this camera anywhere near the extent of its abilities. I don't really understand, is it picture profiles? I don't really understand is it color profiles? I haven't done anything like that, so I can't really comment on it. In terms of how the video comes out of the camera, and I 99% use it on 1080p, I don't use 4K, then all I can say is that seems pretty good quality to me. So, is it a good video camera? Yes, it is a very, very good, relatively easy to use, with the caveats that I've said about the kind of menu options, relatively easy to use video camera with a couple of very clever and very useful additions in terms of the flip out screen, in terms of that product showcase button, in terms of that defocus button. I think it is a real step change. Is it a step change? I don't know, because I haven't used other Sony cameras, so I can't really comment on that. In terms of the kind of cons, or some of the things that I don't think are quite so great about this camera, I've said about the menu options and the mode options, although I have said that's perhaps down to my particular lack of skill and time spent on the camera rather than a fault in the camera itself. The battery life on the camera, as I'm sure you will have seen mentioned in a number of other videos, it's a small battery and it does not last for very long. You can, however, charge the camera with the USB plugged in there. So if you're in the studio or in the garage, as I call it, and you've got the camera set up on a tripod and you've got it near a plug socket, then you can plug it in and charge the camera while you're using it, and that is an advantage. You cannot charge the Canon from a USB plug. You have to remove the battery, you have to put it into one of those battery holders, and you have to charge it up separately. So in terms of that advantage, I think the Sony is a good that's a good thing that you can do, that you can charge it on the move. The other cons of it, I don't think I have any cons with it. I think it's quite strongly made. The Canon feels a bit stronger. I don't know whether the Canon is kind of more metally than maybe I don't know, magnesium. Maybe the Sony is made of magnesium. I don't really know. I'm sure it's a well-made camera, I'm sure it's a well-built camera, I'm sure it's a strong camera. Certainly the Canon, to me, gives the impression of being stronger and more nicely built. I also must say I prefer these dials that you have on top of the Canon camera, as opposed to all being done through mode buttons on the Sony ZV1. That's perhaps because I'm a boomer, I'm an old fella, and I'm used to these kind of analog type dials than I am with all this button pressing on the Sony camera. In terms of, there is a hand grip here on the right hand side on the front, which is quite useful. It does feel a little bit slippery in the hands. Again, I find that the Canon feels a little bit more secure in your hand. I appreciate I've got a wrist strap on the Canon, which I don't currently have on the Sony, because I tend to use it in the studio while it's on the tripod, and therefore I don't put a camera strap on it. You can... You know, it just struck me... oh yeah, beg pardon. There is a little lug there for a wrist strap, but it's only on one side, so you can't use it as a neck strap like that, unless you get one of these things, which is by Small Cage, which you can get from Amazon, which is a metal, I presume aluminium kind of cage that the camera fits into and provides a number of advantages, but it does add significantly to the weight. So if you're going to use the small cage plus the camera plus this wide angle adapter plus a either a remote control tripod like that, or a kind of standard Manfrotto tabletop tripod like that, and you've got a microphone on top of the camera, you're talking about a pretty large piece of kit and a pretty weighty piece of kit, and you might as well just go the whole hog and use something like a Panasonic GH5, which is what I'm actually using to film this particular video. So I think if you're aware, one other advantage that it's got is, I don't know if you can see here on the front of the camera, but when you start recording, that light lights up and it's a red light, and that is a particularly useful advantage. I don't know about you, but the number of times when I've made a video and then realized that I forgot to switch on the record button. I don't know why every camera manufacturer that has a video facility on its camera doesn't have that red light there showing on the front of the camera. So I think that is it doesn't have it, by the way, on the back of the camera, back of the screen. So if you're using it as a kind of vlogging camera, or you're making sort of product showcase videos and you've got the camera mounted on the tripod, then you can see the light on the front. But if you're making a video like that, then there is no light on the back, and if you're not paying attention or looking at the screen or whatever it is, then again you might make the mistake of thinking that the camera isn't on and then finding out, oh God, after you've produced some deathless commentary on your film, or you've got your actors to do something that perhaps they shouldn't have done, or perhaps they should have done, and then you find out you didn't press the record button. We've all done it. We've all done it. I'm sure Francis Coppola, in the middle of Apocalypse Now, shot the whole of a scene, and then the cameraman said to him and said, "Boss, I've got a confession to make. I forgot to switch on the camera." So I find that red light particularly useful. Anything else I want to say about the camera? Well, the buttons on the top are recessed. I wouldn't say that makes them hard to find, but I don't really see why the buttons couldn't be a bit proud of the top plate. I don't see that would cause any great disadvantage. What else? Yeah, I think those are my thoughts on the Sony ZV1. Do I recommend it as a video camera? Yes. As a photographic camera? Well, it's not primarily designed for that. So if that's what you want to use it for, I suggest you buy something else. And I believe now that the Canon G7X Mark II does have a the Mark III does have a microphone port, and therefore turns this camera into a truly good camera. If they changed that screen from a flip up screen to a flip out screen, added the microphone port, then I think Canon would be onto a real winner. They may have a camera that does that already. I'm just not that much of an expert about it. So should you buy the Sony ZV1? Well, given the caveats that I've said, my answer to that would be yes. But make sure you're clear about how and when and where you're going to use it and what you want to get out of it. Because if you're clear about that and you choose the camera on that basis, then you've made a damn good choice. If you just buy the camera for, I don't know, some other reason, because it's a nice new camera and you've seen a lot about it on YouTube and you've seen my video and you think, oh, I fancy one of them, you might come unstuck unless you're clear about why you want to use it. So those are my thoughts on the Sony ZV1. I hope you've enjoyed watching this. As I said, not all of my videos are about cycling, so I hope you've been able to find something that's of interest to you, and I'll see you next time.